Here we go. So working harder is not going to fix your nonprofit's problem. Like you have to think of other ways to start fixing the funding issue, because if it's a recurring issue, then it's not just increasing the workload or just going harder at it that's going to fix this problem. Because too many nonprofit leaders, they're thinking, oh, if they just work longer hours, they take on more projects, if they do more, if they just apply for these grants that have nothing to do with their mission, they'll be okay. And I'm here to tell you that's not true. That is a bold-faced lie you're telling yourself to keep you happy and keep you going. And I'm gonna warn you right now, do not fall in that trap. Okay, do not fall in that trap of more work, of doing more and within the organization to be able to make the impact. You have to have a strategy in place to make sure that whatever work you're doing, there is a purpose and there is a intention behind it. So the funding comes with the work you're doing. Now, the truth is, a lot like overworking is going to keep you in a state of financial lack. And it's going to keep you in a situation where your nonprofit organization is not able to secure the funding that it needs. So you definitely need to look into ensuring that your organization has the strategy and the plan in place to take the actions that are not keeping you exhausted, that are not keeping you overwhelmed, where you're barely making ends meet. Not because you don't care or people in your organization aren't trying hard enough, but because you need to address the issue of your nonprofit lacking a clear and scalable strategy. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about why nonprofits like yours can be overworked, underfunded, and stuck in this never-ending cycle of burnout and how to fix it. That's what we're going to talk about today. We're going to briefly talk about it today, and I want you to join the masterclass later on to ensure that you learn as much as you can and know what direction you're supposed to be going in. Okay, that's the goal. So before we dive in, let's make sure you're registered for this masterclass. Again, like I was saying, this masterclass is going to be later today at 3:30 p.m. Pacific time. I am putting the link in the comments on Facebook. And if you go in my bio on Instagram or whatnot, you will be able to register. So go ahead and register. Registration closes at 3 p.m. Pacific time, so make sure you have that. Now, the first thing I want to talk about with this specific topic is why working harder is not going to save your nonprofit, right? Let's talk about a few things that's actually happening inside a lot of nonprofits these days where you're actually wearing too many hats, right? You're the executive director, you're the fundraiser, you're the grant writer, you're the program manager, and sometimes even the janitor, okay? So you have too many hats. Now, other things that are happening is that your funding is not predictable. You're chasing grants, you're scrambling for donations, and you're hoping money is going to come before bills are due. You know exactly what I mean, right? And you're saying yes to everything because it's better than not having anything at all. And every partnership, every opportunity, every small dollar grant, you're saying yes to, even if it doesn't align with your mission, because you're looking to get that funding. And what it's doing, it's getting you further away from your mission. So when you're trying to apply for grants that support your mission, like it's hard for you to justify the work that you've been doing because it had nothing to do with your mission in reality. So you have to think about like the stats on this, where like a lot of leaders are saying that they're feeling constantly overwhelmed. There's a reason. Oh Lord. There's a reason they're feeling overwhelmed, right? That's because they have too many hats. I want you to consider, because then about 72%, according to Stanford Social Innovation Review, say they are overwhelmed. 72% of nonprofit leaders are saying they are overwhelmed. So think about that, right? And half of nonprofits, nearly half of them don't have a financial strategy beyond just applying for grants. Like they don't think about the different things that they need to be doing to attract revenue. And that's causing a lot of issues, because what happens is your nonprofit is not able to secure the funds that it needs because it does not have a strategy in place. It does not have a plan of action in place to ensure that it's actually doing what it's supposed to do, right? And about, if I remember correctly, 27% of nonprofit executive say their organization actually has enough resources to sustain operations, right, for more than 6 months. So think about that. 27% say they have enough resources. So that's 73% of nonprofit organizations. Think about how many organizations exist within the US. 73% of them do not have enough resources to sustain their activities and impact for more than 6 months. That is problematic, right? And that is not a situation you want your nonprofit to be in, because you want to ensure that you're able to sustain the work that you're doing. You're sustaining your operations, right? And it goes beyond just doing the day-to-day work. It goes beyond wearing all the hats, executive director, program manager, grant writer, right? You need to have a financial strategy in place of how you're going to bring in revenue inside your nonprofit organization to sustain this work. So definitely think about it, because if your nonprofit right now is running on exhaustion, you don't necessarily, I don't think funding is the biggest issue. You just lack strategy. You lack approach of how you're supposed to be generating funding, and it's causing you to be more tired than it needs to be. Hey, Ricky. Yes, Richard said action plan we need on every project. Yes, that's very true. If you don't have an action plan on the projects that you are implementing, it's a recipe for disaster, because what it does is that you're all over the place. You don't know what you should be doing next, and it's more problems than you need. So that's the first thing I want you to consider, is wearing too many hats and the things you're supposed to be doing and focusing on. There needs to be a strategy in place to ensure that you are actually meeting the goals that you set, that you are meeting the financial needs that your nonprofit organization has. And the next thing I want to bring up is that there is a cycle that's keeping you stuck in where you are. It's the more you overwork yourself without a plan, the less time you actually have to build financial stability, right? Because you're so overworked, you're doing all the things, and you're so busy. What's happening is that you are leaving 0 hours or 0 minutes or whatever in your day to actually do the work that you need to do. You're not doing anything that you need to because you're too busy. So what happens is that it's just a cycle. You focus on delivering programs because that's what matters most. You run out of money, realize that you need to raise funds fast, and you scramble to apply for grants and apply for whatever else there is, and hoping something comes through, right? And the funding runs out. You're back to square one. You start doing the same thing, same thing, same thing. It's like a cycle. Now, unless you prioritize that, you need to sit down and kind of come up with a plan of how you're going to build financial stability for your nonprofit organization, you're always going to be stuck in this cycle of programs, money's out, apply, funding out again, right? So it's always, you're always going to be stuck in this situation unless you make the decision of, okay, this cannot continue. What do we need to do to ensure that we're able to move forward? And that's why a lot of nonprofits hire consultants, because they realize it's a never-ending cycle that they're stuck in, and they need to do better. Okay, this cycle isn't just stressful, it's unsustainable, right? If you're running your nonprofit like a passion project instead of a business, you will always be underfunded. Because then I will tell you right now, you can lie to yourself and unalive, like just go to war with me and stay on that hill saying a nonprofit is not a business. You are telling yourself a lie. A nonprofit organization is a business. The only benefit that you have, it has a tax status that helps your organization, which is a tax exempt status, but it still needs to have a business model that supports the work that it's doing, because the work that you're doing, it has a social impact aspect, right? You're helping people, but your business needs to have a model that supports the impact that you're trying to make. So that's where I want you to sit down and comprehend this, because if you do not develop a model and a plan to support the work that you're doing, the projects that you have, the business that you're running, you will always be underfunded. And there's a shift that I'm going to ask you to make, because instead of doing more, you need to be doing things differently. And that's all I'm requesting from you, because I want to see nonprofit organizations do better, because the work that you do is invaluable to so many communities. But if you're not if you're not coming to terms that you need to operate your organization a little bit better, you're always going to disappoint, right? You're going to disappoint yourself, and you're going to disappoint the communities you serve. So the first thing I want you to do is stop chasing money and start building revenue streams, right? Because nonprofits with multiple revenue sources are actually 40% more financially stable than those that depend on grants alone. Because I kid you not, like clockwork, every time I'm on a few Facebook groups for a nonprofit organization, every time someone announces that they got their 501c3 status, the first thing they ask about, what grants can I get? Like, that's the only thing they can do to generate revenue. Like, do you see businesses out there thinking about what grants can I get? No, they're going to hustle, figure out a plan, and get to work, right? They're going to figure out how to bring revenue to their businesses to ensure that their operations and whomever is working for the business is able to continue the work that it does. So what makes a nonprofit any different? Grants is not the only way you can generate revenue, because grants are not predictable. Like, those funders, those people, those grant reviewers, like, they don't work for your organization. You're basically making an ass and crossing your fingers and toes that they say yes, right? What kind of that, to me, that is the most insane thing I've ever heard, of you starting a nonprofit, anybody starting a nonprofit, anybody running a nonprofit, thinking that grants is the revenue source that they need to focus on. Now, if that's your revenue model, or if that's your business model, great. I'm just going to tell you right now, how long is that going to last? Okay, because then if you have no other revenue streams set up for your nonprofit organization, then what happens when those funders tell you, okay, they can't fund your organization anymore? Or let's say that grants don't come out, like grants that you want don't come out, and you have no grants to apply for this year. What are you going to do? Have you thought about anything else beyond grants? Because you need to be financially stable to continue running your operations, right? But if you don't have the funds, how are you going to do that? So one way that you can stop chasing money and start building revenue streams is by selling services, creating membership programs, securing corporate sponsorships so you can create financial security, right? And the next thing that you can do is invest in relationships, not just fundraising, because 60% of first-time donors never give again. I've been saying this for 10 days now, and hopefully it will stick like spaghetti on the wall to your ears, right? 60% of first-time donors don't give again because they don't feel connected to the nonprofit. So I implore you, go build relationships with the donors. Go ask them questions, like engage with them, because donor engagement is very important if you're trying to retain donors, because it's harder to get new donors than to keep the ones you have. If you don't have donors, then start building relationships regardless, so you can start securing donors that will support the work that you do. Instead of just asking for money, build long-term donor relationships with clear impact updates, because donors want to feel involved. Donors want to feel like they know and understand what they're giving to, because they don't want to feel like their money just went down the drain. There's a reason some donors will say, oh, I don't want to give my money to support your operations and admin. If you were communicating with them and how your admin is working or the work they're doing, people wouldn't dare saying that, because I've met some nonprofit executives that also have a problem with that, because they understand if the administrative work and operational work on the back end is not being funded, then the impact cannot be implemented well, because what happens is that if there's nobody to do the work, how's the work going to get done? And that's what you want your donors to understand. And that's why you need to have a relationship with them and sharing clear impact updates, because it helps them understand where their money is going and what your organization is doing. And the last thing I want you to focus on to start shifting this cycle that you're in, I want you to be ruthless about how you spend your time. If you're spending 80% of your time on admin tasks, you're stealing time from your funding strategy. You need to start automating, you need to start delegating, you need to start eliminating tasks that don't move the needle financially. Because if you're doing all these admin tasks and none of them bring one dime to your nonprofit organization, that means you're wasting your time. So figure out how you can automate. Is there a task that can be automated when, like, what are you doing? I'm curious, what are you doing with your time? Because then too many nonprofit executives, oh, what's so busy? What's so busy? What's so busy? Right? Busy doing what? I'm curious to know. What are you busy doing? Like, I would love you to write down the things that you do on the day-to-day in your organization and really be honest about where you're spending your time. Because if you don't know where you're spending your time, right, and you're not contributing time or any of that time to building a funding strategy, what are you doing? Okay, so you need to start making the shift to see more funding with less stress. Because if you're not willing to put your time where it's needed, then you're going to find yourself in a situation where you're not getting what you need, right? You're finding yourself in the same cycle, which is what I do not want for you. So definitely consider these three things that I mentioned. Stop chasing money and start building revenue streams. 2, invest in relationships, not just fundraising. And 3, be ruthless about how you spend your time. These are the 3 things I'm going to ask you to focus on for the next few months, because you need to have strategies in place. It's not all about just being busy, because being busy and doing nothing, that's something that I'm seeing people cling to because they want to feel like they're doing something. Yes, but if you're busy, but you're not actually doing anything, that's a bigger problem. Okay. So I want you to be intentional about your time moving forward. Now, the one thing I want I want you to start changing the game within your nonprofit organization. And if you're ready to stop this burnout cycle, burning yourself out, and start building a nonprofit that funds itself, you need to be in today's masterclass. It's happening at 3:30 p.m. Pacific time. It's called Build a Sustainable and Impactful Nonprofit Organization today. And registration is going to close at 3 p.m. Pacific time. So if you're on Eastern time, that's 6 o'clock your time. Okay, so you do the math. The registration link is in the comments on Facebook and in my stand store. It's called Build a Sustainable and Impactful Nonprofit Organization, or NPO, right? And just register. And if you have any questions, definitely drop them in the comments, because I want you to stop running on fumes and thinking it's overwhelming and it's a lot of work. I want you to have strategic and intentional work, and not just work that's keeping you busy and getting you to run around. So definitely comment on this live, like this video, make sure it pushes out to people's algorithms, because social media is funny. It's funny like that. But anyways, it was a pleasure being here. I will be back on Zoom with whomever registers. If you register, you will get the replay. So make sure you register and check the email that you're putting before you press submit. Because I'm seeing a lot of people's emails getting bounced because instead of putting .com, they're putting .con, like typos that don't need to happen. So please make sure you check the email. If you didn't receive a confirmation, you probably put the wrong email. But anyways, I hope you have an amazing rest of your Friday, and I will see you at the masterclass. Bye, y'all.